Thanks. So let's get started. The topic today is environment. If you open the ThinkBIG doc, you can find two links for today. One is a mural link and the other is an issue link. I would like us to take notes exclusively in mural because that's why this template was made, and it will be much easier to find things if you don't take notes both in the doc and in mural. So feel free to open the mural link and add post-it notes or whatever else as we go forward there on your own, and you can vocalize it later. This is the mural board that's recommended as a ThinkBIG template. So my idea was that we go through this one, but before we get started, I would like to give a bit of background, which is actually the first 2 or 3 sections of this mural board at the same time. The topic is environments. We have some kind of environment in GitLab today, and Orit knows much more about them than I do. I mostly know about some of the shortcomings of the current approach, and this motivated the topic. What I would describe is that as I'm coming from infrastructure background, here we see very different use cases for environments than that exist for developer, from a developer point of view that I'm aware of. And the question is whether this claim is true that these are different. And then follow-up questions are that how can we make a unified approach to environments? What is the problem? I would say that both the mental model and the jobs to be done around environments are actually different depending on the persona. To give you a very specific example with a bit darker green, I added 2 ideas there. As a director of infrastructure, I need infrastructure level reports about my environments, about costs mostly. While as an engineering manager or more of a group leader, squad leader, I would need cost reports about my deployments by environment. And I think these 2 examples try to give a hint of different levels of reporting that exist and different approaches to infrastructure, because the director of infrastructure, he will have no idea about the number of deployments that exist in the infrastructure, while the engineering manager is interested in specific deployments there. And as some GitLab SREs pointed out in the GitLab issue, environments are actually a central element of the ops workflow. And my take on this will be that we are kind of like the fish in the water, that we don't realize how central environments are. Like the fish does not realize that he's in the water. But actually, environments are much more crucial than as we think about them today at GitLab. And what are jobs to be done? I've added a few. I'm sure there are many more, and please add others. The ones that I added is to manage all the environments from a single code base. The other is to deploy applications into a specific environment. I would say these are the 2 top jobs to be done. One is for an infrastructure persona, the other is for a software developer. And secondary, I added to promote application deployments between environments and to monitor environments, manage incidents, etc. Jan, as you are just writing, would you like to read out loud? I don't know what it will be because I can't see it yet. Nothing, okay. And who has this problem? I added a few personas there, but there might be even others who might face problems with our environments because they just have different views of it. It's not always a problem, because I think that for some, our solution is probably great. But the topic of the environment it affects all these people. And to get started discussion, I just would like to ask your opinion about environments, whether you agree with this claim that today the environments might not fit all the personas, or you disagree with that, or how do you see the role of environments?
What is the problem that we're currently seeing in the environments? That's kind of what I'm missing. Yes, there's different personas. We use environments for different things. Some environments are protected. Some environments are not protected. Some environments are long-lived. Some are short-lived, like review apps. What's the problems that we have today around environments?
Is that we can't use environments. We can't use environments to describe workflows, to map. That's the right word, I think. We can't use it to map with directory-based setups. The level of abstraction is does not fit reality, does not fit an environment-focused workflow.
Can you give us a concrete example of the does not map with directory based?
Yeah, if a very concrete one, I can even link it to the. I'm going to share my screen quickly. So this is the GitLab.com infrastructure repository. And these are the environments, what you can find in this directory. These are all environments of GitLab itself, GitLab.com itself. gprod is GitLab.com. gstaging is staging.gitlab.com. So this is really the GitLab.com infrastructure that you can see here. And why they can add the environment label to various deployments, it really does not provide the nice integration that you get with GVS when there's a branch-based setup. The other thing here is that our environment board, it was the deploy board, sorry, I don't want to miss. Was it deploy board's environment board? I'm not sure now. So the insights into the environment were not satisfactory for our own SREs, and for this reason, they are not using these tools, for example. A very specific example that was given in the issue by Graham was when, from an industry point of view, an environment might mean multiple clusters in different regions. And today for us, environment would be just a single cluster in a single region. These are I would say, two examples.
Okay, so one is like our mapping tends to be, well, sorry, that's how we came to it. But the pain point is this mapping of environments based on branches is not sufficient.
Yes.
The other one that I would have thought of is this notion that I have multiple applications that deploy to one environment, and the mapping of a project to an environment to a project is limiting. Is that not the case?
It is the case, Ken, even if we're not talking about clusters and Kubernetes and such. We do have in the plan to do group level environments. So you can see all the projects inside a group at one glance, which should help with that use case. What Victor said regarding multi-cluster is something that we're actually hearing from users that are choosing Spinnaker over GitLab because we don't have that capability. So it's definitely a pain point. And it's limited today. So I agree with that as well.
Okay. So
and, Victor, just for the clarity, the environment board and the deploy boards are basically the same, except deploy boards is for Kubernetes specifically, where you can see the pods, and the environments is usually you'll see only one instance.
Okay, that's why it was misleading. That's why I got confused there. Yeah, an insight from deploy boards there, because I'm sure it was about that, is that they have no idea where those pods are actually, which cluster it might be if they want to have multiple there. And what they told us that it's totally useless.
Yes, I definitely agree with the fact that deploy boards needs to be improved a bit. First of all, there's a lot of content that we're not showing there. So specifically, if I take it to like cloud providers and such, there's really no way where you know where this pod is landing at a first glance without. So if you I'm going to go back to Spinnaker at the moment, but I'm sure there's other tools that do this. When you look at Spinnaker, for example, it is very infrastructure oriented, and you can see on the right-hand side the cluster name, where it's going to be deployed to, what's the URL. You can see like different health checks. We do have some health checks on the deploy board, and they're okay, but there's so much more that we're missing there in terms of pod health and so on, which really help you without having to go into another tool and check really what's going on with your cluster and so on. So we're definitely missing some crucial information on the deploy board as well.
Yeah, what I really would like to discuss with you here is that, do we think environments should be more central to GitLab, or they are at the right level? Because my personal opinion is that they should be more central. As I told you, to me, environments seem like water for fish. It doesn't recognize it operates in water, but it does.
Yeah. So there is a whole conversation about the fact that we want to make environments, and also deployments, by the way, into more things that are easily found. Like if you look for deployments now, the deployments page, it's like impossible to find. And like the deployment is the most important aspect of your pipeline, but it's hidden so well that it's really, you need to have all these different shortcuts and saved. So we definitely need to make this more of a first-class citizen approach. We had talked about in another issue where we were just talking about the left pane navigation to bring environments to be more visible today. It's a little bit hidden. So absolutely. And also it's very noisy today. So if you open the environments page today, you'll see it starts with review apps. And then there's a ton of like what I call not interesting environments, because really what you're interested about is production. And it's really not the first thing that you see on that page. You really need to go fishing. And then also, as you mentioned, what we see on the environment page is also pretty limited, and we've made some improvements in the last few milestones. So now we've brought the pipeline to the environment, so you can see the status of your latest pipeline, which wasn't visible before. We connected alerts into the environment page, so now you know if something's wrong. We're adding, the ability to do a rollback from there instead of drilling down to your pipeline, finding the last pipeline and then rolling back. So there really is a lot to do in that sense. And I definitely agree that the experience is not ideal at the moment.
I would add a few more things here, which is like, to me, when another approach where I again arrived to environments is when I started to think about secrets management, that to me, secrets management really belong under environments. And I know that now we try to add variables to environments as we define environments in GitLab, but just the hierarchy seems to be the opposite. So is that that it's not that the environment belongs to the secrets management is a consequence that I have environments, but it's just that as I have variables, I need secrets managed.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
It's there. It's like that. Sorry, Kenny. It's not only in variables. This experience is kind of across the board. Since everything in GitLab is kind of starts with the project level, we kind of have to bring everything to we have a lot of issues to bring things to the group level, but really what we're trying to do is get it to the environment level at the end of the day. Because if you have a set of permissions, it's a set of permissions for environments, whether it's for variables, whether it's for maintainers, whether it's for deployments, feature flags, you name it. Really, the environment is the real starting point and not really the project.
yeah.
Yeah, I think if you like drew out the like information architecture or object architecture of how you get to, I think secrets is a great one, like how you get to a secret that allows you to deploy to a AWS instance. You have to traverse so many things that the user doesn't actually think about. They think about environment and secrets for that environment, not a project that might define the infrastructure that holds the variables for CI that also contains one that's scoped to a production environment. So I think like that makes sense to me that we have not elevated environments to the right place for these use cases. I do want to, sorry to call on you, Sarah. like I would imagine that this also impacts monitor in that it's not necessarily the project that users are setting up alerts to respond to incidents for, that they think about it more in terms of the environment that might span multiple projects.
Well, Sarah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
What'd you say, Orit?
I just wanted to say something before you unmuted, but you got to it first, so go ahead. I'll add
You
my-
can, I was just gonna say, as someone who does not have as much technical expertise in this area as other people, I've heard it both from the environment perspective, but also from the service perspective. And when someone says service to me, like it takes a lot to unpack that word. And I feel that sometimes they're also talking about the environment in which that service runs. And so in conversations I haven't dug into, when someone has talked about the scope within which they want to alert or have an incident. Kenny, I'm kind of talking in circles around what you just said.
That's
So
all right.
I'll be direct. Yes, we've heard that. No, I have not dug into that. Typically, if someone has an environment, they're able to send that information through in the alert payload, and we have the opportunity to do things with those attributes because we're a single platform for all of these different products.
Yeah, and I would just posit that job to be done for someone responding to an incident. If they wanted to construct that and didn't map perfectly to your environment matches a branch on a project, they would struggle to set that up appropriately.
Yeah.
What I would add was that we did recently add to the alerts at GitLab the environment itself, so people can click into it once you see a problem. And also we added the alerts from the environment page, so you can really, anywhere you look at it, you can understand that this is specific to this environment and not necessarily to a project.
Yep. Thanks, Orit.
Okay, I'm trying to take notes of all of these. If you see them, feel free to add more ideas.
Here's a potentially simple question. Can you have an environment within an environment, or is an environment something that sits adjacent to?
Very good question, actually. I would say we should be able to do that.
You should be able to do that. Okay.
Yeah, I can give you a specific example. Is that if I am an infrastructure person, for me, the environment is a cluster. If I am an application operator or DevOps engineer, then and that cluster contains hundreds of namespaces. Why, for the software development point of view, I have rights to deploy to one of those namespaces, and that's all. And then I have to be able to dig in, and for me, it's just the namespace that matters, while for the operator of the cluster, if my namespace does not consume too many resources, you won't care.
Okay. And James, so it's environments all the way down. Kind of starts to sound like group project relationships.
There was a note around this actually in the issue. I don't know whether it was from Tong or Graham that said that from his point of view, sometimes environments are cross-group or cross-project things for the exact same reason. And I'm thinking, this is a question that I have no answer, whether we can just say that group level environment abstraction, and then I can go down into project level one, and this is how I can have environments within one another, and group and project and instance are sufficient. I don't know.
What's the relationship between an environment and a namespace?
Environment is a much broader term. So by namespace, I really mean a specific thing in a Kubernetes cluster,
Okay.
which my environment is much more broader. It might mean a namespace for some, but it might mean multiple clusters for others.
Okay,
And that
thank you.
namespace is not a messy food term. GitLab uses namespace to mean top level group. We're talking about a Kubernetes namespace, which is like a kind of isolated set of pods in your Kubernetes cluster. I have a question for the design team. I feel like when you were listing out the jobs to be done, we're talking about the same jobs to be done. We're just talking about, but those jobs to be done that are enabled today with our environments and deploy boards are not enabled because of kind of like structure in which certain users structure how they perform that job. So it doesn't feel like we're talking about whole new jobs to be done. It feels like we're talking about supporting people who might have different ways of performing that job to be done than what exists today. Is that, what would we call that if it's not a job to be done?
So for jobs to be done, they have to be solution agnostic. Yeah, if we want to drill into the specifics, maybe we would be talking more about user stories, and that's where we can drill more into the specific parts of the workflow and different ways that users perform things.
I mean, Victor, would you agree with that? That what we're talking about is not whole new jobs to be done. It's the jobs to be done we're trying to achieve. We're just not able to achieve them for certain structures.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, it's not a new job to be done. It's just today it might not fit the current solutions that we call environments. Okay, I would have two questions. One is that, do we see any differentiators with respect to, so let's assume that we built best environments functionality we can imagine. Does it differentiate us from others, from Spinnaker or other amazing tools, or we can't do anything better than what they have?
At the moment, in my head, it's more feature parity. I'm sure that we do the best there is, but I think we first need to overcome our deficiencies before we can excel, if that makes sense.
I remember you, in your review of GitHub Actions, I think you were mentioning that they use the same model for environments that we do. So,
well, so for example, what Victor had mentioned about secrets, that's something really nice that they do. It's environment based, it's not project based, and they let you like expose secrets on any pipeline in the environment. You need to it needs to get specific approval from someone for that to go to the next level, to the next job. So there are some really elegant things that they do, but it seems very similar to our solution in other aspects. There's like little nice features that we can kind of borrow their ideas. Like if you do approve sharing secrets or approve even the pipeline, you can write a note, which we don't have, which is like kind of cute. But it didn't seem like a huge different world than what we have today.
I'm thinking of something like that as we own, I mean, it's hard to differentiate from GitHub because they are in very similar place, but like that, for example, with Spinnaker, they don't own your code base. They don't own multiple projects. So they don't own both the infrastructure side and the application side of your code. That is there any, do we see any big value propositions around this?
To be more extreme, Victor, they don't even own CI. They do only deployments. So yeah, we could definitely make a much better integrated experience. A lot of customers that I talked to that chose Spinnaker, they chose them because they were the first, and they're also GitLab users, and they don't, like, when I talk to them about this auto rollback and all this great functionality that we've been adding, they're like, well, you're doing the right things, but we already have all these projects we already have in Spinnaker, so we're not going to move over. So we really need to bring something killer in order to convince people that are already doing it. The good news is it's not like Jenkins. Like Spinnaker solution isn't that widely adopted as Jenkins. So even for new users, it should be easier to get people on our platform as a single tool chain, as a single tool, and so on. So that's a big differentiator, and that's also why people are choosing GitLab in the first place when they decide between the two, because they only do deployments, and that's it. And also, it's really complicated to get set up. You and I both.
Yeah. I failed.
I failed as well, so that's just saying something.
Yeah, okay, but this could be actually differentiator that setting up CD should be stupid simple.
Yes, it's too bad that we don't have Dove on the call, because we've been talking about that also in terms of the pipeline, the visual pipeline, and getting people into CD easily, giving them templates along the way. So we could definitely help in that sense.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of slowly running out of questions. What I see as where we are mostly with Orit and me is that, as we are speaking most here, is that we agree that environments should have should receive more focus inside GitLab, probably not just in terms of navigation, but in terms of product focus, that we build features around environments. We understand that we are operating within environments and not within variables. And the other thing is that there are really strong offerings that we have to compete with on the market. And basically, the best things we can have is it's super easy to get started with. That's probably the biggest winning point we can have.
And the fact that we integrate with CI and you have your source code, all these great things baked in. If we make the experience really good, there's really no reason to choose a different tool.
Yeah.
I did have a question.
Go ahead, Ian.
Go ahead. We talked about kind of promoting environments throughout GitLab. Should we be looking at kind of all of the opportunities we can to show environments in other parts of the code? So like in package, we might want to say this package was included in an environment, and just kind of find ways to sprinkle little details everywhere. The reason I say that is one of our users in package's favorite feature is on the list view, we added what pipeline it came from. And that was just enough to sell them on it by itself, because it kept it organized and all their commits are together. Is there opportunities like that we could explore, that just by being GitLab and, like we've mentioned, owning those areas, that we could just promote environments in very small steps everywhere?
I think this is really great. I even took a note of it. Yeah, I've seen similar ideas from customers to, like, knowing that this specific image version, in this case Docker container, is currently sitting in my production cluster, whatever environment, that's valuable for them. The other thing is that it's like these at the same time seem to be minor optimizations to me. So it won't solve this basic problem that environments are not central, are not at the core.
So I wanted to mention that I don't know how many of you on the call are aware that we have this awesome feature called Environments Dashboard. And it took me moving out of the release management group, going back to the release management group, to actually figure out where to find the really cool dashboard that was built in the last 6 months. And that's like a shame. It's really hidden. You need to like go to more and then look for it. But this awesome landing page that shows you all the environments, shows you green and red, what's going on, shows you, the alerts that are going on there. If you need attention, when was the last commit? When was the last deployment? It's so cool, but it's so hidden that we should probably make that so much more visible and probably get a bigger win from using the existing functionality without even adding all the new great stuff that we want to do for infrastructure and for multi-clusters and so on, and just make that a better experience.
If I can say, sorry, Henny,
yeah, go ahead, Maria. No.
I have bookmarked this this page of environment dashboard so that I can find it. That was the first thing. But back to Ian's point, I tried to use environments for the Terraform state. And the problem I found in defining which environment the Terraform code actually produces the infrastructure for was that it's a manual process. So if the user doesn't really provide the environment within, I don't know, their Terraform or whatever, as their interface, the information is missing.
If you would have that as part of like the YAML template that you're writing down in Terraform, like it would offer it out of the box, would that have been would that be helpful?
That would be helpful if the user decided to fill it in, if it was optional. Otherwise, there's nothing we can actually do to force them unless we start from the environment and we say configure everything under this environment.
I wonder if, Maria, that is part of what we're talking about. I guess, Ian, your point about making connections to environments more ubiquitous, I think that is the goal. As a single app, we should enable you to like make these connections between something as important as an environment. Like Victor's saying, it's kind of for anything post-release is the water that your application is swimming in. So it should be very critical. But I still feel like those are optimizations without tackling the problem, which I guess you could boil down to users are finding it painful to get started and utilize our environments because of the structure in which we created them. So if we elevated them and said, oh, you can create these environments at a different level and define them, and then there would be more usage, and those connections between all different parts of the application would be much more valuable to each individual user. I did want to ask, I'm not super familiar with what the process I would do to create an environment. I have to define it in my pipeline, right? Would be my first step.
You can also create it from the UI. If you go to the environment page, there's a create new button and you can create it. But for it to actually do something, you would need to connect it to some pipeline. Like it would just be there, sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I wonder if and so that this was actually a question for you, Maria, like now that we have this support and capability for something like an infrastructure project where you would want to define that environment and then make the connection to say, this is where the code lives for the environment. I'm defining it here. And then anytime I look at an environment, I could reference back to that location. Feels like we're missing that. How do I create this thing and connect it to where its meaning is process?
Yeah. In my mind, it would sit above groups, which is a massive change. But multiple groups can sit under one environment, talking about permissions. So when you structure your GitLab, what's the mental model of the users? Basically, we need to run some user research, how they think about the process. Do I start with projects? Do I start with groups? Or do I start with the environments and then what each of them includes?
It's interesting what you said, because I agree, but it's like, it would be the example that we have at GitLab, that actually environments are defined outside of GitLab. That's the current situation for GitLab.com, because we have ops.gitlab.com that defines the environments for GitLab.com. And it's right, yeah. So it's like, as it seems like the environments is more that somehow I want to tie my environment back to groups and projects, but it's a separate project actually in the end.
Well,
from a code point of view.
I didn't follow that ops example because that just so happens because we're in the business of using our single DevOps platform that also hosts our single DevOps platform. But if you were Siemens, you would have gitlab.siemens.net, and that is their GitLab instance that contains all the definition of what their infrastructure is in those environments. But then they would be deploying to something that's not gitlab.siemens.net.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's true. But in that case, it's like, so it's not that it's not in the hierarchy of groups and projects, but you have a separate project that defines the environment for the groups and projects in the end. So it's like,
we've actually run into something similar on package, needing something abstracted away from the projects, where a lot of our users are asking for like just a large registry that they can tie to all of their projects and all of their groups. And so they do create a project, and that project's job is to be a package registry, and that doesn't fit their mental model. It's an easy way to do it, but it's always, I've heard it numerous times from users that it just kind of grates them a little that there isn't that abstraction. And I'm wondering if after kind of the environment is created, there's other experiences that like, and a level of abstraction would be helpful for our users.
I'm just
I
taking
find
notes.
that I find the disconnect to be a problem. You set up one thing, then you set up the other thing, and then you have to go and connect them. So it's not a smooth and seamless user experience.
It depends, like if we can, because I don't know if it works. I think it doesn't work today, but in principle, we could do it that you create the environment by hand, and you say that this environment should be managed by branch names, or this environment should take, so how to say that create me all the environments that exist as branches under this project, or create all the environments that exist as directories under this path in this project. And then whenever I start a new branch, immediately appears a new environment there that says that, okay, this is just new. And we can try to restrict CI that you can't overwrite it to make it more solid.
Yeah, I think Maria's still saying even in that case, you still have to connect the project that might be, maybe this isn't what you're saying, but I think you still have to connect the project that might be deploying to that environment to the place where it's defined as another project. That is not as troubling to me, but I think we're still forcing our users to draw some connections between things. I'm thinking of the, Victor, we've talked about this, the like waypoint example, where you have a project that says, hey, here's how you deploy to me. I'm the definition of an environment in this project. And then other projects just say, hey, I'm deploying to this environment, do whatever it tells you to do to deploy to it. That like makes a separation between infrastructure definition and application definition, but does require the user to make that connection between the two.
Okay. I took note of a few what's next items. I don't expect them to be done in the next milestone, even though that's what the Miro template says. These are until now that to try to avoid minor optimizations and more put environments in focus. Or it said that environments were so great, but Maria had to bookmark them. So it's along these lines. The other is that environments should be configured manually, but we should have to make it easy to add it into Terraform templates and various templates so that it's used much more often, and we make it clear that they exist. We can try to make simple the connection between environment and code or project. And that was the idea of creating environments at different levels. That's clearly a bigger development, I guess, and to encourage users. Oh, it wasn't me. It's not someone I said it. Yeah, to encourage users.
I added that to encourage them during the workflow of creating the YAML template to remind them to define an environment.
Cool.
Can I ask something? With a navigation change, I don't remember where environments are going to sit. Does anybody remember? Is it going to be its own navigation item?
So there's a little bit of a conflict in that issue, whether it should be, whether we should call the parent item release or whether we should call the parent item deployments. So those are the two options.
Okay, I'm just asking because you said it would be a great landing page to show the dashboard. So maybe it would be an opportunity to just surface it.
Do we have any data about how many users or namespaces or projects use environments?
I think we could probably easily find it because I looked at the dictionary yesterday after the product meeting for all the metrics, and I think I saw environment. So even if we don't have it instrumented, I think it'll be easy to find.
Because we could do something like an A/B test to say that for users who use it like for 10% of them, make the default to land on the environments page. Because even if it's set up, they might not use the page actually, because they have to bookmark it to find it, the environments dashboard. So it's set up.
Yeah, I think A/B testing is a good idea for that. The problem is that the number of environments that you see on your dashboard is limited. And rather than the environment page where you see the list of all the current environments. So it's a trade-off, and we can definitely see with an A/B test what users like more.
And just showing it to those who have some environments defined.
Yeah, the environments dashboard, though, you have to not just have them defined, but then also have selected them specifically for inclusion in that dashboard. So you would, in some cases, be showing people a blank one and saying, select the environments you want to see on this dashboard next time.
Annie, I think we could also, unrelated to this topic, but we could probably proactively do a turned on and default and just randomly select 3 just to display whether it's the first 3 or the last deployed or the protected ones. Like we can.
I gotcha. That's a good point. Yeah, something like last deployed would make total sense.
Yeah. Okay. I would love to have some action items out of it, not just ideas. But I don't know who can take up any of this work, or if I know, or it's mostly in your area. I don't know if it was helpful to you. It was insightful to me, I can tell you that. But I don't plan any work on this. That's the situation.
Totally honest, where I didn't plan to do too much around this. That's the honest truth, especially with the realignment of the team. Kind of environments, which is part of release orchestration, went down in priority. But it's really, I think I learned a lot from this conversation, and I think it's really interesting because maybe we can get more users to be using an additional stage, especially around the multi-cluster use case. So I think that's definitely worthwhile to investigate and improve. And I think we also got some low-hanging fruit of some improvements that we can do here. I wouldn't say that I would approach it in the next milestone, but in the near future, yes.
I have one that I would like to actually, which was that you mentioned when Maria spoke about the Terraform, and you mentioned, couldn't we add it to Terraform template?
Yeah.
And probably that's something that's a one-liner even for me.
And I guess I didn't think this conversation, other ThinkBIGs are kind of more directed for a specific team. In my mind, this was about highlighting that we, as a cross-stage initiative, this is impacting a lot more, and maybe that increases Orit's global prioritization of it because she's now informed about how it's impacting other groups.
Absolutely.
Good to hear that. Okay.
The year, so it's pretty easy to change the roadmap.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has anything else to say, because we have some time left. If not, then thank you very much for your input. I will try to add some summary in the, I think we have to write some issue about it, but in the mural, I took notes of everything basically. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Victor, and organizing.